Greetings! Thanks to everyone for coming out to our group author reading. This reading is brought to you by Strong Women, Strange Worlds, which is a group of authors supporting authors. Our mission is to elevate the voices of women and other underrepresented gender identity authors of science fiction, fantasy, and horror through events like our bi-monthly virtual quick read sessions. You can find out more about Strong Women, Strange Worlds in the handout we'll provide in the chat and by visiting our website of link which will also be added to the chat, and that is strongwomenstrangeworlds.weebly.com. I'm your host today, Kate Pope, and you can find out more about me in the provided handout as well. Please note the recording of this session by the audience is not allowed, and a recording of electronic communications, including Zoom meetings and webinars without permission, is illegal. Today, we will be featuring 6 authors: Sandra Barrett, Angela Yuriko Smith, Jennie Goloboy, Rebecca Gomez Farrell, Ellen Booraem, and Sylvia Woodham. Each author will have 8 minutes to read. Ready? 'Cause here we go. Our first reader is Sandra Barrett. Sandra Barrett is an award-winning author of science fiction and urban fantasy stories where strong women save the day. When not writing, she's reading, gardening, and occasionally digging holes way too deep in the back of her historic home in hopes of finding something more interesting than coal slag. Sandra, take it away.
Hello, everyone. So today, as you said, I'm reading from Blood Memory. This is the second novella in my Vampire Jade Murphy Diary series. And I will be giving away 1 copy of this ebook after the reading. So you want to sign up, like she said. So Jade is a 150-year-old vampire who prefers drinking her blood from stolen blood bags instead of directly from humans. It's less messy that way. We join the story where she's going to rescue a vampire friend, Terri, from a human stalker turned kidnapper. The trip to Suffolk Downs lasted only minutes. Finding the old grandstand building took even less time, as I couldn't miss its obvious glass exterior reflecting the lightning sky. The start of a headache from the rising sun itched behind my eyes, but the gray cloud cover would work in our favor. This bastard either knew about vampire sun sickness or hoped we'd be in danger from sunlight. Either way, he was in for a surprise. I entered the building at full alert. The abandoned grandstand stood mostly intact, the rows of red seats all folded closed with years of dust and dirt along the top of each. I heard movement from the upper level seats. A grin spread across my face that I'm sure looked nothing like happiness. Payback time, asshat. I raced up the nearest staircase with vamp speed to take him by surprise. The surprise was mine and Carrie's when we came face to face across a row of red viewing seats. "You don't look in trouble," I said. "Neither do you." I took out my phone and showed her the text messages I'd gotten earlier that night. "How about this one?" she said, showing me a similar message, but with me as the damsel in distress. "You fell for that?" I asked. She glared at me. "So did you. And why didn't you answer any of my text messages?" I shrugged. "Same reason you didn't answer mine. That map attachment he sent us to get here must be malware." I stared at my phone. The fucker owes me a new phone now. Leaned against the metal railing of the nearest stairwell. So why did he want us both here at the same time? Do not ask questions you're not prepared for the answer. I didn't so much hear the explosion first as felt the pressure pop in my ears. I did feel the roof collapse on us. God, I felt that shit fast. Being close to the stairwell probably kept me intact. I opened my eyes to partial darkness and a pressure on my chest that would have killed a human. As a vampire, I was just pissed off. I shoved the biggest chunk of something off my head and chest, leaving behind bloody scrapes that were already healing by the time I kicked the remaining debris off my legs. Well, mostly kicked off. Anger made room for searing pain where metal rebar pierced my thigh and blood poured out. A lot of blood. My hand shook as I tried to examine where the bar ended and I began. Red and slick with my own blood, I grabbed the bar and pulled. And screamed. Shit, that hurt. Blood still streaming out of me, I crawled to my knees. I'd landed halfway down the staircase. White dust filled the air from the explosion, so it took me a moment to realize I couldn't see my friend anywhere. Carrie? I dragged myself up the chunks of roof and chairs that covered the staircase to get back to the second level. Even a vampire needed some time and fresh blood to heal this type of injury, and meanwhile, it hurt like hell. The second story was a mess. The clouds showed above where most of the roof used to be, and a sizable portion of the second level sat now on the first level. I looked down the hole next to the staircase I'd just come up. Carrie? Vampire hearing detected a muffled sound. She lay buried under that pile. Time to make like a superhero and jump in the hole. So I jumped. And I hollered because I wasn't thinking about doing a one-legged jump. Fuck. Carrie didn't holler. That meant either I didn't land near her or she wasn't conscious anymore. Fingers crossed for the former, eh? Dragged myself back to the center of the pile and started shoving chunks of roof across the remaining seats. Carrie's body surfaced under the rubble, her hand first, bent at an unnatural angle. I uncovered her head, then her chest, and finally her legs. Vampires don't need a pulse or to breathe, so it wasn't easy to determine if she was still alive. But I went with the pragmatic evaluation that this wasn't enough to end her. I hoisted her broken body over my shoulder and stumbled and slid down the remaining staircase to the first floor. That's when I saw him, Mr. Stalker, silhouetted by the daylight streaming through the door I'd just come in earlier. Turner, Mr. Stalker, was too fucking stupid to realize his danger. Too fucking stupid to recognize the rage building in a pissed off vampire with anger management issues. I lunged for him, dropping Carrie somewhere along the way, and I did what I hadn't done in decades. I sank my fangs into a human. Sank them deep and drank. I don't know if I consciously thought of erasing his memories of us or just attacked him to recharge myself with his blood. Or maybe neither. Rage doesn't make for quality decisions. Turner's memories poured into me with every ounce of his blood. I could ignore them at first, the fury inside me blocking out everything else. Fresh blood and human memories took over at some point. Took over in a bad way. Never drink straight from the vein. Never, never. My mind wasn't entirely my own anymore. I felt like I was in a dark tunnel, the real me pushed farther and farther back. The new me, the Donald Turner me, taking over. I dropped to the floor and curled into a ball. No. I felt myself slip away, and what took over was bad. Bad as bad could be. I resisted with all I had in me. Could hear myself whimpering as I fought my mental battle. I fought, and I lost. Thank you.
Okay, this is my problem. You guys can't just end it with things like, I fought and I lost, and now I'm not saying anything more. Yes, I'm going to buy the book. I know that's the whole point, but still.
Cliffhangers are good.
I mean, our second reader is Angela Yuriko Smith. Angela Yuriko Smith is a third-generation Shumanchu American and award-winning poet, author, and publisher with more than 20 years of experience as a professional writer in nonfiction. She's a publisher of Space and Time magazine, established 1966, a two-time Bram Stoker Awards winner, and HWA Mentor of the Year for 2020. Angela, over to you.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me here. It's a huge honor to be able to read to you all. I am going to be reading from poetry, Tortured Willows, which was a Bram Stoker winner, and second place, Elgin. Just recently I found that out, so we're all very excited. I wrote this book with Lee Murray, Christina Singh, and Genevieve Flynn. But I'm going to start at the beginning with a poem called Four Willows Bound, and hopefully I can read. My eyes seem to be not so cooperative lately. But Four Willows Bound was written for the four of us that were writing this poetry book. I wanted a poem to kind of tie all of our different works together and what we were trying to say. And so this is that poem. Four willows bound. Four willows stood bound, rooted to the shore, watching, unquiet, waiting. Individual, different species, unique breeds, but all were willows. The storms came with wind and lashing rain that stripped all, every lovely leaf. Silenced, their voices no longer sang in the breeze. And then came people. They stripped away more, taking bundles of branches, leaving behind trunks they couldn't budge, roots too deep to pull. Left alone and too bare to weep, the willows remained. Around them dropped twigs too small to be of value. Unnoticed, they grew, taking root beside mothers, with little to give. But it was enough. Four willows became a grove in numbers, came strength. When the storms returned, the wind could only scatter the smallest of twigs. Four willows stood bound in their sisterhood, in strength, unquiet, waiting. And this book is a lot about generational situations, let's say from growing up with Asian mothers and that have immigrated and all of the issues with that. And so that was us, each of us are kind of dealing with those issues on our own, from our own personal cultures. So this one is Onorigami, which is in Okinawa, which is where the Shimanchu people are native. Onorigami is, they believe that the women hold the spiritual power. And still to this day, there's very active women. They're called Yura and Nori. And I'm sorry, that's seaweed. Noru. And they are the goddesses, like they handle the goddesses in more of the higher realm, the celestial realms. And the Yura are kind of like the day-to-day mediums that handle the little things. Like, there's my dead grandfather's bugging me and making all my stuff burn. So, that's where the Yura would come in and help with that. But Onorigami is the practice of women holding the spiritual power. She spoke with the dead, appeased them with offerings, sat in for the gods. She could tell fortunes, her tattooed hands, hajichi, talismans on skin, marks of pride magic. She negotiated with the angry yokai, Yura, Anoru, the Luchuan, Kimanchu, working in tandem. Forbidden or not, they listened to the kami, not a government. Treasures of Yuku, those who bring life, bring balance, appease the demons. Onorigami, a vintage feminism. The world needs her back. And I do believe that we need to pay a little more attention to our women. So this is a very good forum for that and recognize that we do have a lot of spiritual power. This one is called Her Hajichi. And I'm not native. I'm a third generation Shimanchu, so I always feel very self-conscious that I'm mispronouncing all of these words. So I apologize to my ancestors if I'm butchering this. Hajichi are tattoos that women used to wear in Okinawa on the back of their hands. And they were the most important thing a woman could have. They were unfortunately banned by imperialistic Japan, kind of as a mark of nativism. So women don't wear them for the last two generations, but these generations were starting to reclaim these. So that is on my list of things I want to do, is get my own hajichi. But they developed as you grew up. You began them when you were very small, and then they got bigger and had more details added as you had things happen, like you had family, you had children, you got married, you weren't married anymore. Anything like that went into your hajichi, and they were very personal. And kind of a saying that I read was, or something that I read was, children leave you, a husband can die and leave you, but your hajichi stay with you until the end. So, and my grandmother had them, and I have this precious photo of her with them. Typically, hajichi women, or when they were oppressed or whatever, and it was like bad, you weren't supposed to have them, the women would always take their photos with their hands down so you couldn't see them. But I'm super proud that my grandmother had her hands up, and I was told that she was always like, nope, these are precious to me, and they're still precious to me, despite what somebody else thinks. So that's what hajichi are. And now I can actually read the poem. An arrow, an X, a permanent mark of pride and of her culture. You Chinanchu girls with their decorated hands, an arrow to show where she was headed, equal and independent, tattoos that she chose, a spider, a cross, a needle made of bamboo, a story on skin. They showed their power, and wherever she may go, they showed where she'd been. Hajichi, tattoos on my great-grandmother's hands, marked with pride, for pride, and then banished by the men of Japan who feared onarigami. The ink may be gone, but the spirit remains strong and calls for returns. And that was one of the things that I thought was the coolest about the Hajichi, is women were always equal in Shimanshu culture. It was always egalitarian. They were just recognized as different jobs, different powers, but we need each other for balance. And so when women would get stolen by pirates and whatnot, the people who do want to steal women, the merchant men, when they would go around and they would see a woman with the Hajichi, they would steal her, they would help her escape, they would buy her, whatever they had to do to return her back to her home. So I just thought that was super cool. So kind of like air tags back, through 100 years ago. So this one is called, I'm just sorry, I'm checking my time, Kijimuna. And that is a little, kind of like an elf or a fairy. They have brown skin and crazy red dreads. And when I was a little girl, I used to see them all the time. And I mentioned it to my mom, and my mom was like, well, don't talk to them. So I'm always fascinated by these and why they visited us in America. And this will be my last poem because I am running out of time. But this is Kijimuna. I used to see them before I was old enough to go to school. Children just my size that no one else seemed to see, peeking around doors, beckoning to me. I loved their hair like fire, so as bright as their smiles. Playmates, secret friends, all chased away by grown-ups, not understanding. Or perhaps they did know the Kijimuna and the wood sprite mischief. Perhaps it was me that couldn't see the danger in that toothy grin. And I will stop there, and I thank you very, very much for having me here to read Tortured Willows.
Oh, I love that. Especially the ending, like you couldn't see it in the toothy grin. Oh, it's always my jam. Oh, that was so good. All right, thank you. Our third reader is Jennie Goloboy. Jennie Goloboy has appeared in Apex magazine and fantasy and science fiction. She is self-publishing a novel and shorter fiction under her pen name, Nora
Fleischer.
Sorry, I looked at that and got scared.
That's okay.
She is self-published a novel and shorter fiction under her pen name, Nora Fleischer. She's also written about early American history, including a monograph based on her dissertation. She lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with her husband and 2 children, and works as a literary agent. Take it away, Jennie.
Thank you so much for having me. It's very exciting. I wanted to say, first up, I am giving away a copy of this book. So if you like what you hear, please sign up. I'm going to be reading a part I don't often read, which is the very beginning of the book. This story is kind of a buddy comedy where 2 people who have nothing in common are forced to work together. And this part explains why they're forced to work together. So here we go. Dana Elson sat in her rental car, rain pounding against the windshield, and thought about rainbow daydreams and the pitch that was going to change her life. She imagined striding into their office in her chic dress, tights, and boots, her statement earrings swinging, her sample tucked in her briefcase. She'd shake hands confidently with the whole acquisitions team. Then she'd tell them how her new series would fit into their roster of calendar-based gift items. After that, she'd open the carrying case, revealing her sample. A beam of sunlight would emerge from a nearby window to illuminate its hand-painted glory. Everyone would be awestruck. Then they'd give her $1 million cash. Sure, why not? Dana sighed and watched the rain. Less than 24 hours until her real presentation, and she was making herself crazy. But how is she supposed to relax when she knew how important this deal would be? What she really wanted to do was call her mom, who always knew how to tell her when she was worrying too much. If only that were possible. She picked up the soda in the cup holder and took a big swig. Dana would later reflect that this was the exact point at which her life had forked from its intended direction because her soda bottle was still in her briefcase. The soda she'd drunk from had been left by the car's previous occupant, and something terrible had happened to it. A slippery lump of something disgusting slid down her throat and caught, slowly oozing downward. Dana choked, gagged, swung the driver's side door open, and caught herself just before throwing up on a stranger's shoes. The shoes belonged to a man who was giving her a sharp, cold, terrifying look that made her burrow backwards into her seat. Automatically, she noticed the details that she would put into a sketch. He was bald, blue-eyed, thin, and very pale. His jeans, gray hoodie, and black leather jacket were sodden with rain, but he didn't seem to notice. He glared at her, and she bit the inside of her lip, willing herself to keep silent and still. "That's mine," he said. He reached over her and took the empty soda bottle from the cup holder. Then he shut the door and walked off into the rain. Suddenly, Dana was easy to leave, no matter how nauseous she was. Dana managed to check into her hotel, even though she was shivering with fever, and she could still feel the gooey lump slowly oozing down her esophagus, heating her as it went. Sprawled out on the bed, the ceiling spinning above her, she thought about how when she was sick as a child and her mother used to wrap her in a blanket and put a cool, wet washcloth on her forehead. Now she wanted her mom more than ever. No, don't think of that. She was sick and alone in a hotel room, and she was going to have to call Rainbow Daydreams in the morning to cancel her appointment. God only knew when they'd be willing to see her again, and she was out the plane fare and hotel room, plus maybe hospital fees, because if she didn't start feeling better really soon, she was calling 911 to take her to go get her stomach pumped. "Hello, operator. I'm the biggest idiot you've talked to today." And then, great, now someone was knocking on the door. She didn't have to answer that. Nope, nope, nope. But the door was opening. Housekeeping must be confused. She pushed herself off the bed and stood up, ready to explain she had plenty of towels, thanks. But it wasn't housekeeping. It was the weird white man from the rental car parking lot, and he was just as scary dry now that he'd dried off. And he'd closed the door behind him. "What are you doing?" she said, trying to keep the fear out of her voice. "Get out of here." Dana had always been good at reading people, and this man's unblinking stare told her he was about 10 seconds from slamming her head into the wall, and letting him know how terrified she was would only make things worse. "You have something of mine," he said. "Give it to me and I'll leave." Surely he couldn't be talking about the rancid soda. Why would he care about that? "I can't give it to you. I drank it." "What?" He looked over suspiciously. "Why? Because it was a soda?" She braced herself against the wall, which was nice and cool. This fever was weird. It was like the swollen, hot feeling you got when you stubbed a toe, only all over. "I think I need a doctor." Had she only thought that or said it out loud? The man moved closer, but she had bigger problems. Her body felt wrong. Too short, too weak, the wrong taste inside her mouth, the wrong smell on her skin, like someone else should have been standing in this hotel room instead of her. A ripple of heat went through her, and for a terrifying moment, she felt her body melt. Yuck. And then it felt like the room had shrunk. It took her a moment to realize that this was because she'd grown a few inches. She could feel the strength in her muscles, especially in her arms, because she was now a man. Very, very definitely a man. She tried to move her head to look in the mirror, but she couldn't. She couldn't open her mouth either. She was stuck in her body like a passenger without being able to control it. Dana was always in control. She didn't like this, not at all. The man from the parking lot had his arms wrapped around himself like he was cold. "Jay?" he asked. He sounded scared. She felt her face crinkle into a smile. "Adam," Jay said with her mouth. "Oh, God," Adam said. It actually worked. He grabbed them by the shoulders and kissed them, a hard, desperate kiss that Jay returned with enthusiasm. This was not, in any way, how Dana had planned to spend her evening. What the hell just happened? Who are these people? This was stupid. She was not going to let the people who'd stolen her body get away with it. She knew what she was supposed to feel like, and all she had to do was pull everything back in. She must have closed her eyes while she changed. While she opened them, Adam had moved back a step and was pointing a gun at her. "Shoot me and your boyfriend dies," she said. She was proud of how calm she sounded. "Maybe not," Adam said with a little smile that made her shiver. "You want to risk it?" He paused to think. Without taking his eyes off her, Adam slowly set the gun on the bedside table. That only made her feel a little better. A guy that confident with a gun could probably kill her with his hands. "What did you do to him?" Adam asked. "Nothing. He's right here." She put her hand where she could feel Jay lurking inside her, a strange ball of warmth right at the solar plexus. If she paid attention, she could even pick up some of what he was feeling, a mixture of confusion and love, and for some reason, grief. She tried to pat her curly hair back into shape and scowled. She'd like to be more put together. She especially wished that she wasn't wearing her acid green yoga pants and an old Space Invaders t-shirt, but this was as good as it was going to get. "What happened to me?" Adam crossed his arms. "You drank a reboot of someone else. Your boyfriend, Jay." He glowered at her, refusing to confirm anything. "You called him by name, idiot." "Great," she said. "How do I get him out of me?" A brief pause while Adam considered. "I don't know." And I'll stop there. Thank you so much for letting me do this.
It's on my TBR pile. We'll just end it right there. So good. Our fourth reader is Rebecca Gomez Farrell. Rebecca Gomez Farrell's epic fantasy duology, Wings Unseen and Wings Unfurled, is published by Meerkat Press. Her shorter works have appeared nearly 40 times in magazines, websites, and anthologies, including Beneath Ceaseless Skies, It Calls from the Sky, Pulp Literature, and A Quiet Afternoon 1 and 2. Take it away, Rebecca.
Hi, everybody. Now that we have met, you may call me Becca. Just wanted to get that out there. So what I'm reading from today is Wings Unfurled, which is the sequel to my epic fantasy, Wings Unseen. What I'm giving away for my gift set is actually 2 signed print copies of both books. I'm going to send you Wings Unseen and Wings Unfurled signed, but that means that you have to wait until December 6th when Wings Unfurled comes out for me to be able to send the presents or the gifts to you. So just be aware of that. What I'm going to read from today is the prologue to Wings Unfurled. And I think the only sort of background information you need is that it is a much younger point of view than all of the main characters in the series. Young point of views are really fun to read, by the way. I hope you'll see that I'm having fun reading this one. So here we go. "Okay, you can go," Daddy said. Izzy had been such a good girl for such a long time, sitting on that cold stone bench with the adults. Daddy gave her shoulder a squeeze and she dashed away with a delighted wee. At home, Mama sometimes let Izzy run around the garden for hours. The meadow here was similar, except droopy trees bordered it instead of hills. Izzy's boots slid like skis over the slick, wet grass. Maybe she'd run to the nearby village where her great-great-great-grandfather had been born, like Grammy said. Or was it great-great? Izzy couldn't remember. Running was so much fun. Don't let her out of your sight, Yvonne. Daddy sounded stern, but Izzy could tell the difference between his serious and poking fun voices. Yvonne, the son of Daddy's friend Rawl, was nice, but he'd have to catch her if he wanted to play too. Slow down, Izzy, or your father will kill me, Yvonne huffed from behind, but he was a big 9-year-old. He could catch up if he wanted. Izzy stuck out the tip of her tongue. Maybe she could taste the air like the Razzie people did, if they were her great-greats. Razzie wasn't really their name, but Izzy wasn't her name either, and everyone called her that anyway. Her tongue felt thick hanging out of her mouth, or maybe the air tasted thick. Like in the kitchen back home when Bar Jeffer baked bread rolls, Izzy wished she could have one of those now, with crunchy lemon sugar on top. Croak! What a funny noise. The swans in Grammy's pond sometimes honked so loud they made Izzy laugh. She dashed to the swamp forest, hoping to find the creature that made that sound. Out of nowhere, a rainbow fluttered past the tree trunks. Izzy's breath caught. Its colors were so much bolder than the ones in the sky. Whoa! Yvonne tumbled over her, landing in a patch of mud. Izzy wanted to laugh, but she knew better now that she was 4. So she put her hand out to help Yvonne up. A lancerum always helps their enemies to their feet, she said, reciting one of her father's favorite sayings. Yvonne chuckled. I didn't know we were enemies, but thank you, Izzy. Looking down at his clothes, he scowled. Mama did the same when she couldn't find her pants and had to wear a dress. Yvonne sighed. I'll be right back, or someone else will, okay, Izzy? Don't go far. Okay, she said. How far could she go during a right back, she wondered. Yvonne took off toward her father and his important friends gathered around the table. From here, their big heads bobbed like the caterpillar's body. The rainbow waved again through the trees, its colors fanning out. Izzy giggled when she heard another funny call. Croak! She had to find it. She moved into the woods, following the sound until she couldn't anymore, because there were too many branches. But the rainbow appeared just ahead of her, then hopped away, and a cluster of leaves fell, blocking her view. She wanted to tell Daddy about it, but she couldn't see Daddy anywhere. Only trees with roots as tall as she was rising out of the soggy ground. Izzy scrambled up one and reached her hand out as far as she could. Maybe she could touch the rainbow. Plop! Izzy toppled into a shallow pond and heaved half a cry until she remembered how tough Mama was. So she fought away the ouch by rolling back onto her legs. Her clothes were so dirty, but unlike Yvonne, she didn't mind. Dirty was fun. Izzy scrambled over the roots, careful not to tangle her feet. The rainbow came into sharper focus. It was more like a mass of rainbows, glittery and dazzling as the wings of sparkling moths in the moon's light. Lancera had 4 whole moons. Mama had taught her a rhyme to remember them. Copper Tanzik in the sky, golden Oro likes to fly, black Onsic plays a game, silver Eschi casts my flame. The moons always glowed so strong, but these colors were brighter. Suddenly, so was everything else around her but the trees. Those turned pastel gray, like faded tapestries that had seen too much sun. Izzy's eyes widened. The sunlight pulsed with gold and silver and copper, the colors of the metallic threads Mama had laced through her special long tunics. The light shimmered and shifted around her, and a deeper color, a blue that made her feel cool and safe, hung like a haze in the air. Izzy smiled big, and the rainbows ruffled. They weren't floating after all, but feathers attached to something gigantic. Daddy called her name, but he sounded far away, as though yelling through a very long pipe. The rainbows danced, and Izzy reached for them, felt downy fluff softer than a baby bird. She took one more step, and then Wings Unfurled Chapter 1 begins. You can find out what happens next on December 6th. Thanks for having me.
Okay, if anybody needs me, I'm going to be taking a nap until December 6th. I love that like juxtaposition of the kid voice with, something creepy is happening. I need more. There we go. Our 5th reader is Ellen Booraem. Ellen Booraem spent 19 years as a small-town Maine journalist before quitting her day job to write middle-grade fantasy. She is the author of River Magic, Texting the Underworld, Small Persons with Wings, and The Unnamables. Ellen volunteers as a writing coach in her local middle school. And Ellen, whenever you are ready and/or the spotlight speaker, you can take it away.
Okay. Well, let's see, am I mute? Yeah, okay. This has been really fun. Thank you so much for organizing this. This is great. My giveaway is a signed copy of my first book, which is The Unnamables, which was as a Houghton Mifflin Harcourt book. Now, and I'm going to read from the beginning of River Magic, and then I'll skip a little bit and read a teeny bit more. The river is wide and calm in front of our house, like it never meant you any harm. But you hear the rapids all the time, a quarter mile around the bend. Here's what those rapids are telling you. Do not mess with this river. Mim, that's what we call our mom, she wanted to move away from the river after what happened to Annabelle, but we never did it. Annabelle was Mim's big sister, always lived in Maine, about always lived with us, and she loved this river. We'd be leaving her behind if we ran away. The river being across the road is why Mim and my dad bought this house in the first place. When my dad left just before I was born, Annabelle moved in to help out, and a few years later, she and Mim started ripping stuff down and adding on, and you should see it. It's amazing. Everything built in like it's a boat. Annabelle carved fruits and vegetables and animals in the woodwork, and in surprise places like inside the bookshelf. You pull out Peterson's Field Guide to Birds, and whoa, there's a nest of sparrows. She painted the ceilings, a sunset in the living room, the constellation Ursa Major over my bed. That's the one with the Big Dipper, and it glows in the dark. Everywhere you look, there's Annabelle having a blast. In May, 8 months after Annabelle drowned, I started hearing her voice in my head. I got a 36 in vocabulary that day, even though I tried real hard, and I was lying on my bed after school, all miserable and sorry, and listening to the rapids gurgle and sploosh. And I said right out loud, Annabelle, where are you? Because she used to help me study, and when that didn't work, we made brownies. I got this buzzy feeling, and there was Annabelle's voice in my head, almost like it came out of the rapids, except it was sweet and smooth, calm, like deep water. Here's what she said. Keep your tools sharp and oiled. Floss your teeth. Hello, Donna. Annabelle, I whispered, is this you? Of course it's me. Jeezum, who else? I almost cried, except I didn't, because I'd totally lose it once I got started. I miss you. Where are you? Never mind that. Feeling anxious? Rub lavender oil on your temples. That last thing was right out of Annabelle's Guide to Everyday Household Mechanics. It was a big blue loose-leaf notebook with 278 pages, except pages 115 to 118 were missing, which makes 274. Annabelle kept it in the kitchen, and it was full of recipes and instructions and advice, even poetry. I was into the guide all the time now, trying to do chores Mim didn't have time for. So I was sure this was my own head talking. Man, I wanted that voice to be Annabelle. You're fine. You're smart. Not everyone's good at language arts. Which Annabelle used to tell me a lot, so those words would be in my head too. Never heard them from anybody else. Mim didn't talk about feelings too much, and my big sister Janice, she had nothing good to say about me anymore. Everybody should have an Annabelle. She had bright blue eyes and white hair she got when she was 35, and she was little and sturdy like Mim and me, and gave amazing hugs. She taught me rope knots and knitting and woodworking, also how to get calm by doing stuff with my hands, which is like Mim, and now it's like me. Annabelle's voice started showing up every night to drift me to sleep. Annabelle, I whispered, I'm going to pretend this is really you. Good plan. From this point, we learned that Donna and her family have serious money troubles, and Donna has major friendship trouble that makes her increasingly isolated. Odd things are happening in the neighborhood, among them a new neighbor, Vilma Blixam, who has moved into the late Mrs. Whittingham's house uphill from Donna. Vilma Blixam's yard has acquired a spicy, swampy aroma, and one night Donna hears a loud whump, whump, whump sound overhead. Nobody's met Ms. Blixam, and since the kids always cut through her yard on the way to school, Donna thinks it's time to take her some brownies. Vilma Blixam turned out to be about 1,000,000 years old, 6 feet tall and skinny, wearing leather pants and a wool vest and this soft blue shirt buttoned up to her neck, plus black knee-high boots with red laces. Her gray hair was pulled back in a bun, and she had bushy eyebrows and this long, straight nose. When she opened her door and we were standing there with our plate of brownies, her mouth cranked into a smile that looked like somebody had just jabbed her in the gut with a sharp pencil. Mim held out the brownies. "Welcome to the neighborhood. We're the Landons from down below. I'm Nan. My daughters are Janice and Donna." The pencil jab smile wobbled. "I am Vilma Blixem." She had a little accent. "I do not eat sweets." She didn't take the brownies. Mim pulled the plate back to her chest. We wanted. Mim doesn't do social stuff that well. That was all Annabelle. Vilma Blixem cranked up her smile and stepped back from the doorway. "Please, come inside." Inside was dim with a faint haze of stink. Raccoons got into Mrs. Whittingham's house while it was empty over the winter. Her kids hired professional exterminators, but the house definitely remembered it used to have raccoons. Mrs. Whittingham's dingy old sofa was right where it always was, also the raggedy recliner and padded rocker. Except now there was a fancy wooden coffee table with what looked like real raccoon feet. Janice looked close. "Interesting table." "I am out of practice." Ms. Blixem turned her head and gave me this piercing look right in the eyes. "It is good to work with your hands." "I work with my hands," I said. "I know." "How do you know?" Janice asked. Ms. Blixem gave her a look. Janice smiled at her just to be annoying. "Guess we should go home now," I said. Mim looked at me like I was the most brilliant thing in the world. "Yep, another busy Saturday, haha." She held out the brownie plate. "Want to keep these in case you have guests?" Vilma Blixem didn't look like much of a hostess, but she reached for the plate. "Yes, perhaps I will eat some." Her sleeve hiked up so we could see her wrist, which had a squiggly green and red tattoo. I couldn't see what it was, but Janice was closer, and she let out a gasp. "Whoa, cool dragon." Ms. Blixem pulled her sleeve down over the tattoo. "It is nothing. Thank you for the cakes." The door slammed behind us, and 2 locks clicked. And that's where I'll end.
That was so good. I was just typing in the chat. I love that juxtaposition of this like very stern old lady with like a cool dragon tattoo. That's so neat. Thank you so much to everyone who came out today.